Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be looking at how to do Vlookup and sort inside of a spreadsheet file. We're also going to be reviewing some previous functions that we would have covered in class, and those functions are the average and if function. Now the first instruction says you are to insert a row between Usain Bolt and Bill Murray and add a new record. So we're going to go down to the last person, which is Usain Bolt. Right click on row 7 and say insert. So now we have a new row. The format for the ID number is first and last initial with a 2-digit number. So for example, we wanted to say Simone Perry. So SP01, first name Simone, last name Perry, grades 78 and 95. So we have added a new row. It says calculate all the students' averages. Now in our previous class you would have learned that to calculate an average you have to use the average function. So it's equal average, and you don't have to spell it out because normally the list of functions that are nearest to the spelling that you have usually comes up. I'm going to double click on average and I'm going to highlight from D5 to E5. So these are the two values that I'm going to be finding the average of. When I close the brackets and I press enter, and it gives me 84.5, I go ahead, and because all of these students will be using the same formula or function, I'm going to be auto-filling it. It says in instructions 3, adjust your averages to no decimal places. So I already have the averages highlighted. I'm going to go to the number section, which is found under the home tab. So home tab, number group, and I'm going to click on the decreased decimal icon until there are no decimal places left in each of the averages, which meant I only needed to click on the icon once. The next step is to, in an appropriate part of the spreadsheet, enter the following in two separate cells: pass mark and 80. So I'm going to start in A3. I'm going to type pass mark in A3, and in B3 I'm going to type the 80. Of course you could have typed it somewhere else, but I am choosing to type them in A3 and B3 respectively. Then it says you are to use an if function to compare each student's average with the pass mark to determine if a student has a pass or fail. Now remember your if statement. So we're going to be inserting the if statement in this column here. Remember your if statement takes 3 arguments. We say equal if, and it takes a logical test, value if true and value if false. Now in the logical test we're doing some comparisons, and they already told us what we're supposed to do the comparisons against. It says use the if function to compare the student's average as this value with the pass mark, which is this 80, to determine if a student has passed or failed. Now if the pass mark is 80, it must mean that a student has to get 80 or more in order to get a pass. So we say equal if the average, which in this case is F5, is greater than or equal to the 80, which is in B3. Now, in one of our previous lessons, you learned about absolute cell referencing. In this case, we have to make the B3 absolute because when we autofill, we do not want this cell reference to change, because we are always going to be comparing the present student's average with a fixed pass mark. So even though as we go down the rows, the student's average is going to change, the pass mark is not going to change. Hence, this one is relative, F5 is going to be relative, however, B3 is going to be absolute. And remember that Excel normally gives you all the arguments that needs to go into a function. In this case, the first one is a logical test, and then that is followed by a comma and the value if true. Remember, the value if true is that value, whether it's a calculation, a letter, or a word, or some symbol, doesn't matter. That is going to go into the current cell that we are working on if this logical test works out to be true. That is, if the average is greater than or equal to 80. And then we have a comma and then the value if false. Now the value if false is going to be used, or is going to be placed in the cell if this logical test works out to be false, which in any of these cases it means that the student's average will not be greater than or equal to 80. It would be 79 and lower. So we're told that the student must get a pass if the average is greater than or equal to 80, and they must get a fail if the average is otherwise. So as long as the average is not greater than or equal to 80, the student will get a fail. However, if the average is 80 or more, the student will get a pass. Once you have completed that, and you will notice that I have the words pass and fail, one for value if true and one for value if false. Because they are words, we are going to include them in double quotation marks. Press enter and then we autofill as usual. Now, next function that we want to look at is a Vlookup function. And for our Vlookup function, what we are actually doing is searching through a table for a specific value. And when we have found that value, there is a corresponding or matching value that we are interested in. In this case, at the end of every year, whenever you get your class or subject averages, you also have a corresponding letter grade that matches that average. So, in this case, we're going to be using the Vlookup function. Vlookup stands for vertical lookup. And vertical lookup talk about looking in a particular table from top to bottom. Right? It takes 4 arguments. It takes a lookup value, a table array, a column index number, and a range lookup. Now the lookup value is a value that you are looking for. In this case, we are going to be looking for average. Right? Then we put a comma. Then it asks us for a table array. Now your table array is a table or a set of cells that has either the lookup value or a value near to it, with a value that is corresponding or matches that lookup value. In our case, we have some averages and we also have letter grades that match those averages. Here is a table below. So we have, these will be, the value will represent the student's grade, and then the letter would be the letter grade. You will notice that underneath value, I do not have exact grades for every student. We have approximate values. So what the CountA will interpret to mean is that for a student to get an E, they have to get from 0 to 49. For them to get a D, 50 to 59. For them to get a C, 60 to 69. And for them to get a B, 70 to 79. Sorry, to 84. And then now for them to get an A, they have to get 85 or more. So F5, which is the average, is the lookup value, comma, and then our table array, now we highlight from all the values in the table except the heading, and we are going to make this table absolute as well. And the reason for that, we are going to be autofilling. So when we autofill and go down for the other students in the spreadsheet, this table array B26 to C30 that table reference must remain the same. We're going to put in a comma, and then the next value is our column index number. Now in your table there we have 2 columns. The lookup value is coming from the first column, but the value that we want to really return into this letter grade cell is going to come from column 2. Hence our column index number is going to be 2. Then we put a comma, and then it asks for range lookup. Now the range lookup asks for one of 2 values, either true or false, right? And if we are looking for an approximate match, which in this case we are, because all of these grades are not represented in this table, we're going to find the closest match to it. Then we are going to type true. If we are looking for an exact value, meaning that when I look for this value here, you're going to find it in this column, then we use exact match. So it depends on what you're doing. If you were looking for, say for example, if you had a hardware and you had a whole long list of inventory and you wanted to find the price of an item, then you're going to be looking for an exact item number, not approximate item number, because each item has a different price. Alright? So in this case, because we're looking for an approximate match, we're going to type in true and then close the bracket, press enter. That person has a B. I'm going to come back to the reason why this student has a B even though their grade is 85. Now let's look at the table. It says 85 or more, the person must get a A. So your question must be, how is it that this student has an 85 average but has a letter grade of B? Here's the reason. Initially, when we did the average calculations, the student's grade was actually 84.5, and if we increase the decimal, we see that. So because the spreadsheet is still reading the 84.5, it is giving the student a B. So we're going to decrease back the decimal, and we realize that the rest of them are correct. We don't, in this tutorial, we're not going to be looking at the position, so we're going to leave that as it is. It says, in an appropriate part of the spreadsheet, count the number of students in the class. You will recall from previous lessons that we can count using two functions. We can either use count or CountA. We use count when we're counting the number of cells in a range that contains numbers, only numeric values. And we use CountA when we are counting the number of cells in a range that are not empty or they have alphanumeric values. So it's a combination of letters and numbers or numbers. Right? So in this case, we're going to be using CountA. So equal CountA, and we're going to highlight. We're not going to highlight the heading, we're only going to highlight the ID numbers. You could have also used the first name or the last name in this case since we're using CountA. And then we're going to close the bracket. If you had chosen to use any one of the grades, you'd have to use a count function, and then we're going to press enter. Oh, I have a -8 here because somehow I accidentally typed a negative sign before the function. So I'm going to take it out and I'm going to label it. In fact, I'm going to move it, put it over here, and I'm going to put number of students. I'm going to wrap this text so that it will show, and it shows number of students 8. Then it says, use labels in an appropriate part of the spreadsheet to identify the average, highest, and lowest average mark attained in the class. So we are told, so I'm going to insert some rows here just to give us some space. So we're supposed to have 3 things, I think: average, highest, and lowest. So I'm going to put class, average, highest, score, and then lowest score. We know that from just now that average is found by saying equal average. In this case, we're finding the class average. So we're finding the average of all the averages. So we highlight from F5 to F12, close the bracket, and press enter, and that gives us 80%. Then the highest score, whenever we're finding the highest value in a series of values, remember we use the max function. So we type equal max, and then we highlight the entire set of averages again to find the highest average that is there. And it's the same thing for lowest, except we're using min in this case. Equal min, double click on min, and then we highlight the same set of data again, close the bracket, and press enter. So the highest score is 93 and the lowest is 61. Then it says you are to sort the spreadsheet based on last name and then first name. Now whenever you're sorting a spreadsheet, the first step to take is to highlight the headings as well as the data that is under the headings. So I have highlighted from A4 to H12. The next step is to go to the data tab, then click on in the sort and filter group, click on sort. We are told to sort by 2 things, last name and then by first name. So in the sort by section, we're going to drop it down and select last name. We weren't told any specific order, so we're going to leave it A to Z. And please ensure that if you want the headings to show in the sort by list, drop down list, you have to ensure that the my data has headers. That box is checked. We are told to sort it using 2 things, but there's only space for one. So to get the sort by first name, we must click on add level, and then we drop it down the box and select first name, and we'll leave the other things as they are. Then I'm going to click OK. So you notice now that at the top, before it was Hillary Clinton, it's now Adele Atkins, then Usain Bolt, and so on and so forth. Then it says, add a heading at the top, merge and center the heading and use the font size 12, 20, bold the heading and change the font color to red. So I'm going to highlight from cell A1 to H1. I'm going to say you're supposed to merge and center it. I'm going to merge and center, and then I'm going to put academic record as the heading. I'm going to click on it and change the font size to 20 as we were instructed. And then it says you have to change the font color to red, which I have done. We're also told to bold the heading, so I'm going to click on the heading and click bold, which is the B. Then it says adjust the column widths accordingly. So some of these columns are not wide enough. Now I will not double click here because there are two ways we could do it. Double click between B and C, or simply click between B and C and drag to your right. The reason why I won't double click is because these instructions, the cells are merged, and if I double click, it's going to make the first name column as wide as these cells are. So I'm going to adjust them the way I want to adjust them, which is about there, which gives everybody's name the chance to be visible. And that is how we use the functions average, if, Vlookup, CountA, max, and min.